this, if at all, but I wanted to talk to you, whoever you are out there that might be watching this, about getting diagnosed with autism very, very late in life. And I kind of wanted to tell you a little bit about my story, and hopefully if you hear this and it gives you guys a little bit of hope, then it's worth showing my face and taking a chance, but I usually do not do anything like this at all. I knew there was something wrong with me from the beginning. And I'll backtrack and say, when I was younger, I didn't have the presence of mind to know necessarily that it was wrong. I just knew something was off. There was something about me that set me apart from other people, and I could not put my finger on it. My mother passed away when I was 12. I was very babied. I was the youngest of 5 kids. I was not expected. I was the only child my mom and dad had together. And after my mom died, I pretty much raised myself. My dad would take me to work with him every day, and at the time, I hated it because I would have much rather been at home, sitting in bed watching TV or reading books or something like that. But looking back, if he hadn't done that, I would have never seen him at all. If he would have done that, the only times I would have seen him was when he took me to school and when he picked me up. So in a way, I'm glad that that happened. But my dad also worked like 80 hours a week. So he just didn't have much time to pay attention to me other than making sure I had food, making sure I went home and went to bed when I was supposed to, making sure I went to school. That, above and beyond that, he just did not have the time. So I raised myself. Everything that I needed to know, I taught myself. I taught myself about the birds and the bees. I taught myself about it being that time of the month. Everything that I had to know, I taught myself. So it hit me during college. There is something really, really wrong with you. Why are you like this? Why are you not like anyone else? And that's when I started to see that maybe other people were growing up in the things that they liked and the things that they were interested in, and I wasn't. I was stuck right where I was. And all my obsessions and stuff just didn't go away. All the adults in my life said, "Oh, you'll grow out of that. You'll grow out of that." And I never did. Ever. I remember when my dad died, I went and just tore through all of his files because I was so sure I was going to find that scrap of paper in there that said, "Your daughter is blank. Your daughter has been diagnosed with blank." I had no idea what that blank was, but I was sure it had to be there, and it wasn't at all. So I started to think maybe I was mentally retarded, which isn't the word that you're supposed to say, but it's the only word that I can think to describe how I felt, because that is how my friends and family treated me. But I looked back to my school programs and I thought I was always in general education. I never had any classes that were any different than anyone else's. My degree didn't have any, or my high school diploma didn't have anything different on it than anybody else had. I never got pulled out for classes. I never went to any other classrooms. So then, after that, I just decided that I was insane. That was it. I had lost my mind somewhere along the way, or maybe I was just born that way. And it really didn't help that all the women in my mom's side of the family had mental illness. So on top of the depression that I had losing my mom, losing my dad, taking care of myself my entire life, completely abandoned to my own devices all the time. Then I had that other layer of depression of what is wrong with me? Why am I not like other people? Later on, I started to realize that the people that I thought were my friends weren't really my friends. And it was the classic thing of they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. I was in a really small town. We only had one high school. You saw the same people every single day. And that was kind of why they were my friends. They didn't have any choice. We were in each other's classes. We saw each other all the time. And when we left that circle and they went to college or moved away, I was just crushed because suddenly nobody wanted to have anything to do with me. Nobody wanted to be friends with me anymore or keep in contact with me. When they came back to town, they didn't want to see me. And like I said, I always knew there was something constantly in the back of my mind nagging at me that I was not like everybody else. And why was I not like everybody else? So when you know that, you know. That is your intuition. That is your gut feeling. Don't let anyone gaslight you. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. You know yourself better than anybody else in the world. So when you start to know these things, you know them. I can't put it any other way. That sounds redundant, but you can be sure of them. And if no one listens to you, you will just have to find a way to make it on your own. I went through college, graduated college, started working at a mall, and started making friends with people who were so much younger than me, which raised a few eyebrows. And again, I didn't understand. I would rather be with people who were like 16 and 17 than be with people my own age. And it wasn't that I wanted to date them. It wasn't that I was interested in them sexually or anything like that. It's just those were the people I can relate to. Those were the people that were fun to hang out with. Those were the people that didn't make me feel weird. Finally, I left that job and decided to pursue education. I had a degree in English, but I wasn't doing anything with it at the time. I was still working retail, which I had done my entire life. And that's when I started to learn about autism. And once I started to learn about it, I still didn't think that was me, but my internal antenna just kind of went up. And I remember one of the ladies that gave a talk saying that in the 70s, which was when I was a kid, if you were autistic, you were institutionalized a lot of the time. So that began to make me think, well, maybe my mom did know something was wrong with me, but she was not about to tell anybody because she didn't want me in that situation. She didn't want me taken away. I started, I'd been online for a while. Once I graduated from college, I had gotten a computer, and this was like in the first days of Windows, and everything was pretty new, because I am old. And all the people that I made friends with were a lot younger, again. But then, at some point, all of a sudden, I started to make friends who were autistic. We just gravitated towards each other. And again, I can remember meeting one of those friends in person and setting up literally all night long talking to them and them saying, "Did you ever feel that way?" And me going, "Oh my God, yes." And then me saying, "Well, has this ever happened to you?" And they're like, Yes, yes. And literally having every single thing in common. And it still didn't dawn on me. And finally, it was my second year teaching. I had a kid in my class who was autistic, and we clicked just on a level that was amazing. Someone that I'll never forget. And he kept telling me, I don't understand it. You get me. No other teacher has ever gotten me the way that you get me. And so finally, I talked to someone, and I said, I have that kind of tingling feeling that I might be on the autism spectrum. Is there a checklist that I can go through? Is there anything online? Are there any tests that I can do online? And this lady, she was very, very smart. She was a college professor. Her father had been a college professor. Her whole family were incredibly smart. And so she sent me this battery of tests. And I will never forget, it was said, most of it was for if you were a lot younger, but there are ways to adapt it to older people as well. And it said, it was a scale from like 1 to, I want to say 120, where 120 was severely autistic, 12 was not autistic at all, and I scored a 72. And I said, okay, that's it. And finally, and still no one took me seriously. No one believed me. So I saved up my money, and I went to a psychiatrist, and I told him everything basically that I'm telling you now. And sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. I wasn't expecting to get this way. He was so nice. He said, you're already convinced, so I believe you. If you think that you are autistic, there is, you are. There's nothing else that I can say. You have laid out the evidence for me. I don't need to lay out that evidence for you. And then he spent the rest of the session talking about how some of his best friends had Asperger's and what great people they were despite the fact that society didn't accept them. And so in the end, that's what he told me that I was diagnosed with. And he said, do you want to take an IQ test? And I was so scared because my entire life, all my family and friends had told me, you're stupid, there's something wrong with you, you're a weirdo, you're not like everybody else. And I knew that your IQ is something that you can't change. And my worst fear was, what if I take this IQ test and it's really low, and I'll know that I'll never be able to do anything about it? How will I live with myself knowing that I am that stupid, and that everything everyone ever told me my entire life was true? And I took the IQ test anyway, and I scored in the 97th percentile. And he said, that means that you are smarter than, there was 97 in one area and 92 in the other two areas. And he said, okay, you are smarter than, or, at a higher level than 92% of other people. And that's what this means. And I had told him, my entire life, I had been told I was stupid. I was told I would never amount to anything. I was told that I was worthless. You're a freak, you're a weirdo. You're never going to fit in anywhere. And I said, I believed that I was stupid my whole life. And he said, well, can someone that is stupid be at the 97th percentile? And I said, No. And that was when I was 47 years old. That was 3 years ago. And the minute I got that revelation, it was like my entire life made sense. Every single thing that anyone had said to me, all my actions, all the things that I had ever done, everything made sense. And I realized I wasn't insane. There was nothing wrong with me. I wasn't from another planet. And I found out that there were so many other people like me out there. So, if anything that I have described sounds familiar to you, first of all, you are not alone. Second of all, when I found this out, I started telling everybody, oh my God, I just found out I'm autistic. That, my entire life made sense. It's such a revelation. I'm so happy. And almost all of them said, no, you're not. No, your whole life, you're not autistic. You don't look autistic. You don't sound autistic. And yet, those were the same people going, you look retarded. You sound retarded. What's wrong with you? Why don't you look like us? Why don't you sound like us? Why don't you dress like us? Why don't you like the same things we like? You still listen to that band? You still watch that TV show? What's wrong with you? And, everyone, my family, my husband, there was only 2 people that said, you know what? I am so happy for you. That makes perfect sense to me. I'm so glad you took the chance. I'm so glad that you went out there and did it. Everybody else, still, 3 years later, I don't talk about being autistic around any of my friends and family because they don't believe that I am. And it is what it is. Some people aren't going to get it. But as long as you get it, that is the important thing. Now, a diagnosis is costly. For me, because I wasn't needing to get any kind of accommodation, I didn't need it for insurance purposes, I didn't need any kind of paperwork, it cost me around $400. If I had needed all that extra stuff, it would have been upwards of $1,000. And that's the only bad thing. It is very expensive to go out there and get a diagnosis. But if you know for sure in your heart and in your mind and in your very being that this applies to you, let that be your truth. Don't let anybody else take that away from you. Don't let anyone else convince you otherwise. Even if you have to be like me and just talk about it only with people that it's accepted. And it's rough because sometimes I'll do something and I'll just like, damn it, that's the autism talking. That's the autism showing. And I want to say that to my husband, and I can't because I know he's just going to start in with, oh, you think you're autistic, but you're not. Trust me, like I know what autism is, even though I don't know a damn thing about it. So, anyway, I hope this video gives you some clarity. I hope it gives you some hope. And if nothing else, just be brave. Stand firm in what you know in your heart. And if you think you are, chances are you probably are. So, here's to us.